What should leftists be doing to work towards arming yourself for self-defense? Arming yourself. What do you mean? You don't work towards arming yourself. You simply arm yourself. You know, you have the guns or you don't. Get to know your neighbors as well. Do you think Beto O'Rourke will win the election? Please say yes. Isn't he slightly favored, or am I totally off on that? I could be thinking of another governorship. No, he's well behind. Okay, then I'm thinking of another thing, yeah. Let me see. Where is it? Governorship. Ah, yes. It's 94-6. I really think O'Rourke should have just run for House or Senate. Beto will never win in Texas because of what he said about guns. Yeah, it is kind of weird to posture yourself as like the Democratic opposition in Texas while being one of the most openly anti-gun Democrats in the United States. That's kind of weird. No idea why they'd go for that. But, you know, whatever. There are districts in Texas where he could win, of course. There are blue districts in Texas. It's just statewide, you know? Anti-gun in the midst of mass shootings. We'll see an unexpected turnout from him. I don't think Americans are as politically motivated by mass shootings as you think they are. I really do not think guns sway the independent vote that much. You got to understand, but like, it's kind of dumb to be motivated by the mass shooting thing. Mass shootings do not kill that many people. Like, the problem is, like, mass shootings are stuff, like, they're good for news and everything, but if you take a look at a proportion of gun deaths, mass shootings represent an incredibly small minority of total gun deaths. They're not like, this is not like a material conditions thing, you know? They get overhyped by the media, like, massively. There is overall societal trauma, though, kids having drills, etc. Yeah, but like, keep in mind, a lot of parents want those drills, you know? The drills are seen, like, a lot of this is like a manufactured consent thing. I just don't know. I don't think this motivates voters that much. The abortion stuff will. Material conditions and all that. People are directly affected. You know, in Texas as well. You're wrong. I live in rural Texas and people are genuinely scared here. Rural Texas and people are genuinely scared of mass shootings in a rural area. I have not seen it sway like voting results that much before. Generally speaking, I think Democrats should drop the crazy anti-gun stuff. People do be retarded. Well, of course people do be retarded, obviously. What's sad is that legit arguments against gun control exist. They're pushed by pro-gun leftists, but most pro-gun Americans don't push those arguments. They just don't care about children dying. Yeah, I mean, the problem is, like, the conversation around gun politics is so politicized to this point that it feels like everyone's just, like, adopting the virtue signal, you know? Like, none of this really... Like, if you actually want to cut down on gun deaths, like, the majority are done by handguns, and nobody's going to pass a handgun ban, so you need to, like, look into other stuff, you know? It's just, yeah, it's just such a waste of time. But keep the normal gun stuff like background checks? Yeah, I mean, I'm in favor of background checks. But Beto O'Rourke isn't just pro background check. Beto O'Rourke has made anti-gun his like whole thing. Gun laws after Uvalde shooting, including on assault weapons. What specific policies has he proposed? It's all the AR-15 shit. Yeah, I know, whatever. Beto wants to seize all assault rifles. Yeah. Can we just solve both problems at once and allow abortion by gun? Conservatives are already so gun crazy, they're sticking to their pants. Well, I mean, right now in Texas, the only legal way to get an abortion when you're pregnant is to walk into a school and wait for the shooting to happen and just try to catch the bullet to the stomach. That's so like right now it kind of like de facto through like a legal loophole that already is like the best shot, you know, because you won't be held accountable for that. So this is partially a joke. So yeah, just that's your best shot. I don't doubt it, Gally. How do you feel about delayed purchases? I'm totally okay with delayed purchases. Yeah, cuts down on like the heat of passion stuff. You know, like wait a week for your gun or whatever. I don't know. Beto O'Rourke's just really, really loud about this stuff. I don't know. If you look up Beto O'Rourke gun control laws, you actually get an NRA article, which I don't normally see recommended anywhere near the front page of Google. No. No reason to ever actually look at anything written by the NRA. Did you see PNB Rock die on camera? I have no idea what you're talking about. No clue whatsoever. Vaush, my dad owns 3 guns and is woke. You underestimate the impact of Uvalde? I don't know what you mean. I'm woke and I own 9 guns. Are we competing? I need more guns. I don't. I need a proper rifle, like with a pistol grip. He's a rapper? Okay. What happened? Who died? Yeah, I need like an AK platform or something. Why are the 538 house projections so bad they're terrifying me? Because this country sucks, mostly. Tactical? Yeah, yeah, yeah. My dad works for Norfolk Southern, and he told me he doesn't want any new medical benefits from the deal because it would increase his medical prices. Thoughts? How? How would how would getting medical benefits increase your medical prices? The medical prices are determined by the facilities you go to. The benefits are covered by the workplace. What is the relationship between these things? I have no idea. I have no idea. We'll see how the rail stuff goes. I expect that the unions are going to turn back the deal. And we'll see. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. Yeah. I thought the House was Dem leaning. Well, it's Dem leaning right now for like the current House. Uh, but the House forecast on 538 has a somewhat less optimistic projection for the Democrats winning over. We'll see. Slowly closing, but closing too slowly. Um, if we go only to predictions based on existing polling, though, like we're only looking at polling and not other stuff, it's closer to 50-50 with a slight favor for the Republicans. So you know, this stuff is really, really, really complicated. But it's the longer, the more time passes, the closer we get, the better things are going to favor Democrats because we're still seeing an aggregate change from the effects of Roe v. Wade being overturned. So I think that's going to push things in our favor over time, but I don't know if it'll ever push us above par. Certainly not for this type of projection. I mean, we'll see. Vaush, you always say Americans have to be prepared when time is right for socializing, but how does a country like Egypt start when it's surrounded and subjected under the boot of a military dictatorship? So historically speaking, like you have to understand, there are no examples of a country just being socialist and being fine. Okay, we're still in the cool zone of history, the interminable class conflict, the internal contradictions of capitalism still resonate in every fabric. Everything we have. We don't really have like a tried and true example of the dialectic resolving itself. In terms of like the military dictatorship thing, usually what happens though, like realistically speaking, is that the military dictatorship gets increasingly incompetent and corrupt, and over time, different factions quietly build power within the military, and a popular revolt proves a good opportunity for the splintering off of the military to sort of facilitate, a new coup, and whether or not those things turn out better for the working class kind of depends like significantly on the conditions of the popular revolt. Um, but like how that actually plays out is pretty complicated. Egypt isn't really a democracy, so there isn't much you can do in the way of like you know electoral in-system participation. Most of it would be about like class consciousness spreading amidst the proletariat. That's why there was never such a thing as a peasant revolution. It's always people in power who are dissatisfied. I don't think that necessarily means that it's not a peasant revolution, right? Like Mao's revolution in China was absolutely like a peasant revolution, like even if sort of Mao and the vanguard party were the orchestrators and the people who seized power afterwards. Millions and millions of peasants had to be on board with what happened. Um, I guess you could say there's never been an example of a truly peasant-led revolution, like from start to finish, because invariably, the like a sort of managerial class, whether it's bourgeois or military or sort of like mercantile in nature, will take over. But there are better and worse examples. Stuff gets complicated. Like the American Revolution, for example, was absolutely a revolution which could not have happened without the participation of and enthusiasm for a great many peasants and colonists here in the States. But obviously the whole thing was sort of orchestrated by and led and eventually commandeered by the aristocrats, the bourgeois of the colonies. Washington was nearly a billionaire if you adjust for inflation. He was enormously wealthy, hundreds and hundreds of slaves. Uh, the American Revolution was absolutely a bourgeois revolution, but it was a bourgeois revolution characterized by you know, the participation and consent of many of the workers of the American colonies. Not all of them, you know, not even close. And obviously there were slaves, um, but there are certainly worse examples of bourgeois revolutions. They weren't really that wealthy. Washington was very, very wealthy. George Washington, yeah. Uh, Here, list of presidents by peak net worth, and you can see at the start of the list right there, George Washington net worth $707 million in 2022 USD. Washington was very wealthy. He was the wealthiest president until Trump. Yeah, yeah, he was. Yeah, I said nearly a billionaire. That's what I meant. I meant nearly a billionaire, and a lot of it was human beings. Yeah. Oh, he was a slaver. Yeah, he was. You know, a wealthy off plantation labor. Yeah. Um, How much of that is from his popularity post-revolution? I'm sure he'd be a great person to sign on with. He was very, 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 very wealthy um, before the revolution as well. He was he had military experience with the British, and he was a very wealthy planter even before things got started. You know, the critical difference, and this is the one thing that I will give credit to the founding fathers for. This is like the one thing I'll hand it to them for. It's that like nowadays rich people see like because we live in like the modern era and the contradictions of capitalism have sort of heightened to the point that they are now. Back in those days, being wealthy and being educated tended to be like pretty closely related. Whereas nowadays, Elon Musk is a fucking retard, you know? Like George Washington was a slave owner, and naturally then you know a horrible person. But he was also, you know, something of a philosopher, or at the very least, you know, an appreciator of a philosophy, as were many of the founding fathers, very intelligent people, because it was kind of culturally expected that if you were to be part of this sort of mercantile aristocracy, you would be well educated, you know, you would be genteel, you would be like, you know, you would aspire towards the mannerisms of the idealized European nobleman. But nowadays, we don't have that expectation at all. And like, it's very obvious through social media that we are completely controlled and every element of our society is dictated by the whims of massive retards. So in that respect alone, you know, is a class distinction which has changed over the past several hundred years. Yes, Thomas Paine was the most based of the founding fathers, and also a smart guy. What is meant by contradictions of capitalism? What I mean in a dialectical sense is the internal contradictions between different elements of the logic behind capitalism. In this case, the one I'm referring to is the idea of a meritocracy. You know, capitalism is meant to be meritocratic, and that the greatest degree of participation, intelligence, motivation, stuff like that is what lends you, you know, the greatest material reward. But in the world today, there is basically no relationship between wealth and intelligence. There are ultra wealthy, ultra powerful people who are incredibly fucking stupid. Whereas it seemed that, you know, whether this was determinative or this was more kind of like a cultural expectation, it was the case that, you know, the landed Pigeon with the goddamn curtain. Yeah, Pigeon, do you have an opinion on the founding fathers? What? Ooh, little baby. Some kind of scrungus. What was I saying? Oh yeah, you know, the idea that we live in a meritocracy is like really really difficult to defend today because we can see how fucking stupid our leaders are. But back in those days, largely because education wasn't widely available and culturally it was expected that the very wealthy would be educated, you know, the wealthier people back in those times, I think generally were like at least relatively a bit more on the ball when it came to being cultured and intelligent. Didn't make them moral, you know, didn't make them good people. But you know, I think there's a reason why with the founding fathers, you know, you did see so many like you know, remarkably learned men for their time. I think that generally is preferable to your leaders just all being stupid. But are we talking about colonial hierarchy? They were in a new economy, cream rises to the top before corruption sets in. Well, that's usually what happens after you shake a system up, right? You saw that with the founding fathers. You tend to see that with socialist revolutionaries as well, right? Like even if I disagree with a lot of the stuff he did, Lenin was a pretty exceptional person. The same could be said about like Castro, right? Like if you have the emergence of a new system, not just like a shakeup within a system, but like a full, you know, reassertion of a hierarchy. You know, the cream tends to rise to the crop, at least more reliably, before corruption and favoritism and nepotism and internal contradictions tend to, like, take hold and worsen things. Yeah. Castro was leagues better than Lenin. Lenin. Yeah, generally I agree. I'm not, again, I'm not like morally judging here. I'm saying like exceptional in their faculties, like in their ability to do things, you know? Like, 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 for example, I fucking hate Mao. I really hate him. Like, I think he's basically indefensible. Like, I don't think any of the shit he did, like, he's fucking sucks. His writing sucks. He sucks. Mao, you know? But like, obviously Mao was exceptional. The dude literally like traveled around the countryside as a guerrilla fighter, like mobilizing millions of people, and eventually took control of the entire country of China. Of China! Do you know how many people have tried to take control of China? Like, obviously he was an exceptional guy. I may think he's a gigantic piece of shit, but clearly, like, he had he had something going on. I think this is another thing that tends to distinguish fascist and socialist revolutionaries, is that socialist revolutionaries tend to like bring about a new system entirely, whereas fascist revolutionaries tend to just sort of be the worst elements of the pre-existing system. You know what I mean? Like, socialists come from without and stir things up and sort of flip the system. But like, if you take a look at how fascists emerge, they tend to be like representatives of the far right party prior in a democracy, and then they just sort of consume everything within, not really flipping the system so much as exacerbating its worst elements and using them to, achieve and maintain power. And for that reason, fascists often to be really incompetent, like Adolf Hitler, who was, in addition to being, a sort of a lunatic, drug-addled buffoon, also sort of made habitually bad decisions when he wasn't being cautioned by his staff. And it's sort of probably expedited the defeat of Nazi Germany, through his paranoia. Likewise with Stalin. Stalin, who I absolutely consider a fascist, he didn't flip the system. Stalin was just the worst right-wing element of the pre-existing system established by Lenin, right? When Stalin took hold of the Soviet Union, he didn't like fundamentally reorganize everything. He just worked in line with the military and the NKVD to exacerbate its worst tendencies. And he was also a massive piece of shit and a very paranoid. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah. There we go. This is the pinnacle of Vaushite thought that we've sort of developed here. We're working it down.